listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome. This is your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum for Salam Radio 106.2 FM. It's wonderful to be back. I'm laughing because I've just thought of something before I came in. It's been one of those days, really hectic, and I've just been doing a little bit of multitasking, running from work, coming back home, and then rushing over here to bring you the most up-to-date news on the medical world and on other issues that affect us from a place of well-being and mental health in the Muslim community. And I hope that you've all been well. I'm Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. I'm a GP in the centre of Peterborough. Well, actually, I'm not a GP in the centre of Peterborough. I work in the centre of Peterborough in a very busy inner city practice. It's an absolute delight to be back with you. How are you all faring? I hope that you're all well and are keeping warm. And I know that we've had all sorts of little bugs, vomiting, diarrhea, flu, COVID, you name it, it's been thrown at us over the seasons, hasn't it, since the winter started. But the days are getting longer and the sun has started to shine brighter, and I can just about see those daffodil sprouts come out of the ground, which signals that spring is just around the corner, which brings with it happiness, new hope, and that's what we like here at Salam Radio. So before I go on to introduce my wonderful guest, I am going to ask you to call me in on the conversation and ring us at 01733 602 133, or you can text us on our WhatsApp number, which is 074 11191062. And of course, there is the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. But in the meantime, I would love to welcome my wonderful guest who is here from Peterborough City Council's Fostering Department, and her name is Catherine Chamberlain. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello, thank you.
It's lovely to have you back here again.
It's lovely to be back. It has been a while, I think. I think it's been about a year or so.
It has been.
Which seems to have flown by.
It has been. And the thing is that you were here previously with two of our councillors and also people from the Department of Fostering.
Yes.
You work very, very hard. The department works very, very hard as well. And over the last couple of weeks, it's really coincidental that we're having this show today, because I had been talking in previous shows, alerting people to safeguarding for adults and children, the signs and not symptoms, but the signs to look out for, and where we need to signpost such people if we're worried about their welfare. So this actually ties in very nicely with that.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, it is.
Timed it nicely.
Oh, yes, that's right. So how are you?
Yes, good. Yeah, it's been an interesting 12 months for fostering. Last time I was here, we were still very much a combined service with Cambridgeshire. So now we are Foster with Peterborough. So we have a new website, we have a new brand, we have a new logo. You've probably seen a familiar face of mine all over posters and leaflets all over the city. So we're getting out there, raising awareness still. We still need foster carers within the local area. And as we know, Peterborough is a very diverse city, so we need foster carers that can represent that diverse population of the city. So about why I'm here today, really, just to kind of sort of reinforce some topics that we've spoken about before. The need is very much still there. So, you know, if you do have a spare room and you've got the love and stability to offer, then I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
You know, me and the team would love to hear from people that might be thinking about it or have questions, because it's such a huge topic and it's such a minefield in a way to sort of unpick if you don't know anything about it, or, you know, you kind of feel a bit nervous. But we always say no question is a silly question. Yeah. And, you know, we're very approachable and helpful, and we very much want to rule people in instead of ruling them out. So hopefully there are people listening that have been thinking about it, that, you know, might want to get in touch, and I can give all the contact details of how to get in touch with us before I go. But it's been busy. It's been busy. Lots of work going on, but
Yeah.
I love what I do, and
Yes.
it's really nice to be part of a lovely team.
Fabulous. Well, I can definitely see that passion exude from you, and each and every time you come here on Salam Radio, you give us some wonderful information. I think it's really important to share with our listeners today the vulnerability of these young children that come into care. They really have come from difficult backgrounds. And it would be useful, Catherine, if you could give our listeners a bit of information about the current sort of rough, do you have any rough estimates of figures on how many children are in care in Peterborough and how many are on the waiting list for care? Do we have those figures?
So in terms of how many fostering families actually in Peterborough at the moment, we have 82 fostering households.
Okay.
And they look after about 155 children between them.
Oh.
So it sounds like quite small figures, but I think what you can tell from that is obviously they're looking after more than one or two children. You know, some of
Yeah.
our foster carers have 4 or 5 children in their care,
Wow.
which is obviously quite a demand to keep up with. And it just shows how passionate and how dedicated they are to fostering and being able to provide that support. But what we want is for more availability locally, because it's really important for us that we maintain that local element for our children so that they can stay in the same schools with, you know, peers that they're comfortable with and, you know, people that they know. And most of our children enjoy school and they see it as a safe place and they enjoy being around their friends. So we don't want to take that away, as well as uprooting their home life all at once, which could lead to further trauma and further instability. So it's really important that we have that, you know, cohort of carers to be able to offer that availability when a child needs.
Definitely. I think it's really interesting because in my line of work as a GP, you often have such children who are flagged as a looked after child. And for our listeners' knowledge sake, obviously looked after children who are in care have an envelope of different agencies who are supporting them, including the local authority, their GPs, a family. But it also highlights to us as clinicians that we are to give due attention to that cohort of children. And it's because they're coming from incredibly challenging backgrounds, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And I've seen so many foster carers as well who have this as a job. I know of quite a few people who are now elderly who will say that they embarked upon foster care when they were younger and could tell you, as if their memory was yesterday, that they had 7 or 8 children that passed by through their care. They had been part of their happy milestones, of their celebrations, of their successes, of their achievements, and how incredibly rewarding that is.
Absolutely.
To be a part of that.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing to take away, isn't it? That the rewards are there, and to offer those opportunities for a child or a young person or a young adult that might not have had that is a really wonderful thing to be able to offer. I was actually on some online training this morning with some social workers and some foster carers, and there was some foster carers on there that had been fostering for 30 years.
Wow.
Which is incredible. And, you know, the amount of children that they've looked after, seeing them, you know, go through to being looked after like long term. It was just really fascinating to hear about their experience and to hear what they've been able to provide for those children that, you know, have come from unfortunate circumstances.
Definitely. And to also, I've got to commend yourself and your colleagues who actually take up the responsibility of these children to make sure that they are assigned to well-meaning homes that match, if you can, where possible, their sort of background. Faith is considered, obviously. Cultural
absolutely.
background is all considered, as you've said in previous shows. And could you, for purposes of our residents, tell us a little bit about the pathway of a child that is taken into care? So what happens? They obviously come under the care of the authority and they've been identified. What happens after that to that child? And then we'll go on to what the pathway is for somebody who wishes to embark upon becoming a foster parent.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a complex sort of procedure. There's legal proceedings involved.
Okay.
So we have to obtain an order to share parental responsibility for that child, which gives us the power to place them in foster care. So the foster carer doesn't have parental responsibility for the child, but they will be their sort of named carer. They will provide the day-to-day care. But us as a local authority have the parental responsibility. The guidance from the family courts is that every child should have a permanent placement by 6 months' time. So that's the guidance. So in that 6 months, while the child is in foster care, what will happen is they will have a social worker who will be looking at all the options for their permanent care. So whether that be going home to a parent or going home to a family member or a family friend, all of those options are explored. If any of those are not possible, then we look at things like adoption. Depending on the age, the needs of the child, could they be placed in an adoptive family, or if they're thriving with their current foster carers and they've built that attachment and that, you know, they've got that stability and they've got that trusted relationship, could they stay with their foster carers? So long term is possible. So it's quite a complex set of proceedings and quite a lot of involvement and a lot of planning for all the professionals involved to sort of determine what the best option is for that child. So yeah, quite lengthy. So that's hopefully a good summary of the process, because it is quite a complex one.
It is. And thank you very much for highlighting that, because often I think it's really important that whilst we talk about those that put themselves forward to foster a child, to understand where that child and how that child comes into care, and how they are then taken care of, or processes that take place to ensure that they are placed with a suitable family.
Absolutely.
And so just imagine that you have a parent who now has really thought about this and is having a look at looking into fostering a child. So, for example, I'm a parent and I think, right, do you know, I don't want another baby of my own, but I really want to care for a child. Yeah. Describe to me the pathway. So who would I have to contact? I'm here, sat at home, and all of a sudden I thought, I have to think about this now. I really want to do this.
Yep.
And I've had a chat with my husband and he said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So first point of contact is the recruitment team. So I'm the senior recruitment officer and I have a recruitment officer who works with me. So we have an email address. So we have fosteringteam@peterborough.gov.uk.
Easy.
We have telephone number 01733 868686. Quite easy to remember. Yeah. And our website has been totally revamped. We have a whole host of information on there. So fosterwithpeterborough.org.uk. So we are fully fledged now. We've got all our information on there. We hold virtual information sessions each month. And on the website, there's a whole section about coming onto one of those. So we hold them every month and we alternate between an evening session or a lunchtime session. So we're trying to obviously cater for people's working commitments, family commitments. So hopefully there's dates and times on there that people can book onto. That's probably a really good place to start, because that kind of gives an overview as to the types of fostering that you might be able to do. It gives an overview as to the support from the local authority, which is one of the things that we are very much a champion of, and supporting those people to be able to be excellent foster carers. We all need a support network, and whether that is from our own family and friends or whether it's from professionals as well. So everyone in that network is really important. So there's lots of information that's provided in our information sessions. They're a really good place to start. So if you don't feel quite ready to sort of pick up the phone and say, yep, I want to go ahead, I would advise coming along to a virtual information session to get a feel for things and to ask some questions. And it's either myself or my colleague, John, that would host one of those. And we are joined as well by a foster carer and a social worker from the fostering team. Sure. So there's 3 people that can answer all the questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Well, that sounds pretty straightforward. Now, we do have to talk about the obvious challenge of the low uptake of foster carers or the low recruitment of foster carers within the Muslim community. We are a Muslim community radio station. This is something that's been identified, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Since I was last on this show, we have had 2 families that have been approved as foster carers, which is great.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is that we want more. We want to hear from people. And, you know, having people in the community that have recently been approved will hopefully be a big help for us as well, because they can talk about their own experiences and share those with people that are considering fostering or want to find out more. You know, we can always put you in touch with them because they're going to have that experience of making the inquiry, going through the assessment process, going to approval. But also we want a presence within the community as well. So thinking about doing drop-in sessions at community centres, coming along to mosques, things like that. You know, we want to speak to people and we want to hear what's holding people back if they have been thinking about it. Because then if we know about those challenges, we can help try and overcome them and have that discussion. And of course, fostering is not going to be for everyone. We completely understand that. But as I say, we want to rule people in and not rule them out.
Yes, and I think that that's a really good point that you make, asserting why people feel hesitant. And I also think that there's a lot of room for going into mosques. And actually, the food for thought that you've given me is that the Joint Mosque Council, who oversee all of the mosques here in the city, would be the ideal channel to get in touch with. So perhaps this is something that after the show I could communicate to you via email as to writing to them, because I'm sure that there are many mosques in the city that wouldn't mind you taking along an information stall with a colleague at prayer times when there are more people who offer their prayers, and footfall within the mosque would be greater. So I think that that's a really good idea, actually. There is room for that. And the fact that it's baby steps, but it's sort of in the right direction as well.
Yeah.
What are the things that have been identified or you think may be an issue when it comes to low uptake of Muslim families who are embarking on fostering? I can think of a few, but have any been brought to your attention as to what the reasons could be?
I think the thing to note is that the recruitment of foster carers nationally is a big problem. So we are not just isolated to Peterborough with it being an issue. You know, all across our sort of neighbouring counties and authorities are in the same position. There could be a number of things. I think the cost of living has had an impact. Obviously, you and I know how expensive everyday things are and how much of an increase, you know, we've seen maybe on bills, utility bills, shopping bills, things like that. So for families that have maybe already got multiple children that they're caring for, I think it's really, you know, the availability and the resources that they can offer.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that people don't want to help. It's just they maybe don't have that time and the availability. And that is the thing with foster care. You know, you do need to have that so that you can offer that stability for a child and to build up that relationship with them. So I think there's a number of things. You know, we all have busy working lives. We all have busy family lives. And it's just about how much time do people have, if any at all.
Yes, and it is. I mean, people have started to work longer hours. You see more and more people living under the poverty line, especially within Peterborough as well. But I think alongside that, you're seeing more children with the need of, for some reason, going into foster care too. And that's really important. And if a child isn't placed with a family in Peterborough, what happens to that child?
So then we have to look at external agencies. So agencies like out of the county, out of the city, which means that we're taking that child away from their local element and what they know as home. So it could be that they are then placed with carers maybe an hour or two away, which means that they might have to change schools because it's not going to be feasible for that carer to take that child, you know, for an hour's school run every day and 2 hours sometimes. It just really does depend on the situation. And it means that they're losing that sort of local connection and they're not able to be around their friends as easily and things like that. And it's when you're already sort of facing a huge move such as a home, it's really important that we don't uproot absolutely everything in that young person's life, which is obviously going to impact on the trauma that they've already experienced. And we're really conscious of that. So where possible, we always want people to foster for their local authority so that they can provide that stability.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense, to try and accommodate children within the local area, especially if they can stay within the schools that they're in and that familiar environment.
Definitely.
A lot has been said by, and obviously this isn't our political show, it's about health, but a lot has been said about kinship care.
Yeah.
And kinship care where family members approach. Do you think that that's made your job a lot more easier, or has it just been the same, or you haven't really seen much of a difference?
I think it's quite a difficult one, because kinship care is obviously really important. And, you know, if you are sort of a family member that has had temporary care of, like, you know, a niece or a nephew or something, then, you know, that's also a wonderful thing to do. And those carers are identified within the child sort of permanence planning and the court process. And I have never worked on the kinship care side, so I don't sort of know how many we currently have in Peterborough. But it's certainly something that has been promoted a lot more recently, and is always an option that we look at as well, you know, when planning for a child's permanent home, because if they can stay within the birth family, then that's obviously going to be the primary option, and the option that is always going to be favoured by the family courts.
Yeah.
But where that's not possible, then obviously we need to think about fostering and recruiting more foster families.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense. Now, obviously, we're approaching the last 4 minutes of the show. It's very important for our listeners to understand, especially in the Muslim community, number one, how rewarding this could be. Number two, a lot of families in the Muslim community who face the unfortunate situation whereby they have a family member whose children have been taken into care might not know that they could also be eligible for kinship care. So it's important that they listen to this programme. Mm-hmm. So if you are someone who is aware that a family member could have been taken into care, and if you are eligible, you'd have to go through the process. Would they ring the same number, 868-686?
So they can do, and I would put you in touch with probably that child's social worker, who would be overseeing the planning for that child and putting together the assessments.
Yeah.
So when a child is in the family court process, one of the things that will be looked at is there anyone that can be put forward to care for that child? So they would probably be best having a discussion with the child's social worker, and then they would undertake that viability assessment and do a risk assessment to make sure that they could be a viable person.
That's fabulous. So there are options out there, listeners. If you are tuning in just now, this is the Body, Health and Mind Show. I've got the wonderful Catherine Chamberlain from Peterborough City Council Fostering Team, Head of Recruitment, and has given us some wonderful information. Look, the uptake is really low in the Muslim community to take children into care, to become foster parents. It is a very straightforward process, and they've had a wonderful new website known as fosterwithpeterborough.org.uk. I've been scrolling through it. It's got a photo here of a lady in a hijab who looks like she's been matched with a young child in care. It's incredibly easy to read, may I say.
That's good.
And incredibly easy to navigate, and I've been looking at it whilst you have been talking to me as well. Or other than that, if you've decided that you definitely want to think about considering fostering but would like more information, pick up the telephone and ring 01733 868 686. Go onto the website as well. Think about it. And it's not that the other misconception a lot of people have is that once you start fostering a child, it will be forever and ever. It might just be for a short-term placement. So Catherine, so grateful that you have been able to make it. Is there any last message in the last minute that you'd like to give to our listeners today?
I think you've pretty much summarised it. Just get in touch, and we're always open to hearing about places in the community that might welcome those drop-in sessions. To be able to put a face to a name. And for me, I love being out and meeting people. I'm quite a sociable person by nature, so it would be lovely to be in the community and to build up more of a relationship with listeners and people in the community, definitely.
Fabulous.
So yeah, just get in touch. No question is a silly question, so just ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Catherine. And somebody just popped up a question to say that it would be wonderful to have leaflets dropped off at local surgeries, community centres and mosques. If you've got leaflets.
Absolutely. Yeah. So myself and my colleague, we have been in and around Peterborough, dropping in, knocking on doors saying, can we display a leaflet? And most people have been brilliant and really accommodating. So we will continue to do that so that people are aware of how to get in touch.
Fabulous. Well, Catherine, thank you so much for that. It was so wonderful to have you on. And likewise, if you have been considering about fostering a child, it's incredibly rewarding. Look at the potential that you have to bring rays of hope into that child's life, some happiness into that child's life. You would be creating a secure future for them, just a cocoon of protection. To know that that is their safe space is invaluable. To know that you are there to provide that support, and you will have support from the council. But in the meantime, it's wonderful to have had Catherine, and then come back to me. Don't go away after the break.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Craving authentic Desi flavors? Look no further than Desi Restaurant. From midday until 1 in the morning, enjoy our homemade specialties that will transport your taste buds. Indulge in tantalizing papri chaat and savor the rich Chersi Kadahi. Treat your friends to our fresh 1 kilogram Chersi lamb handi. Plus, get 2 12-inch pizzas for $11.95. Located at 298 Lincoln Road, we deliver from lunchtime until 1 a.m. Call 01733 555 795 now to order and experience Desi Restaurant's flavors.
Where can you get high quality and low prices? Amar Food Store and Halal Meat in Lincoln Road Triangle is the place to go. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. Also send money to Pakistan absolutely free. We have all top brands at special offers, offer free customer parking and provide a free local delivery service. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call us on 01733 687 374. High in quality, low in prices.
It's healthy, nutritional and halal. It's The Lads, your first choice for burgers, pittas, wraps and flame grilled lamb chops and peri-peri chicken. Now with 5 fantastic new flavours, plus sides, grilled salads and milkshakes too. Open daily from 11:30 until 11 p.m. Call in at 15 Cowgate in Peterborough. Order for collection online at thelads.co.uk or by calling Peterborough 562287 or place your Lads delivery order at ubereats.co.uk.
Masterminds Tuition Academy is for your high schoolers, your something to provers, your subject strugglers and keen learners, your brave jumpers and fist pumpers. Affordable personalised learning plans are delivered through our centres in schools across Peterborough. But not to worry, we also provide online and home visits with flexible timings. Whether it is maths, English, science or 11+, Masterminds is a must. Find us on all socials and visit our website mastermindstuitionacademy.com or call us on 07516 166 003. Masterminds, master the matrix.
Whether you're eating in or ordering for collection or delivery, Big Mouth at 349 Lincoln Road in Peterborough is the place for all the family favourites you know and love. But now it's even better, as loaded fries, grilled and smashed burgers, peri-peri strips and wings have been added to Big Mouth's mouth-watering menu of pizzas, chicken and so much more. Call in today, order for delivery via Uber Eats or call 01733 201020. Big Mouth's open 11 till 2, 7 days a week.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. This is your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum for Salam Radio and the Body Health and Mind Show on FM 106.2. Now, before the break, we had the wonderful Catherine Chamberlain, who is the head of fostering recruitment at Peterborough City Council, that told us a little bit about what the pathway is for, number one, a child who is taken into care, and number two, the process that entails anybody who would be interested in going into this line of taking a child on board. And she gave us some really useful information. And before I start my next segment of the show, I think it's important to understand that we have information about it and that I can give it to you. And she spoke of a telephone number if you're interested in fostering, which is 01733 868686. Or you could go onto the website, which I've just seen is very self-explanatory indeed, which is fosterwithpeterborough.org.uk. And it gives you all the information that you need to check whether you are eligible to foster a child. And the other thing that I think that as in the Muslim community that we unfortunately have a lack of is that we don't realise that if you are related to a child that has been taken into care, there could be a possibility that you become a kinship carer. And the current government has laid out legislation that is going to make this more easier. So don't think that if somebody has been taken into care that you pick up the phone and you speak to somebody, your local counsellor, to prevent it from happening. No, express an interest. If you are worried about that child, but you yourself can look after that child, then pick up the phone and express that you would wish to look after that child. And I'm sure, just as Catherine had said, they would be able to, and the team will be able to take you through the process. So that was about fostering in Peterborough, how to embark upon it. And the second half of the show, I thought I would talk about some of the challenges that foster children face. And foster children can be right from newborns all the way up until 18 to 25 years, where they are then designated as care leavers. They are still protected by the authority. They are still offered support by the local authority, and that's their transition phase. And locally in the local authority, there are schemes and there are measures and services that help this cohort of individuals. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that some of these children face. And it's important by setting the stage here. So according to the most recent statistics, believe it or not, there are more than 80,000 children in the UK, with a significant proportion who are placed in foster care. So there are 80,000 children placed in care within the United Kingdom, a large proportion of which are placed in foster care. Now, these children, as Catherine said, are removed from their homes for various reasons, which are ranging from, let's say it how it is, neglect, abuse, or even family breakdowns. But being in foster care isn't just a simple change of address, is it? It's a life-altering experience, and it often involves emotional, social, psychological challenges that can last far beyond their time in care and can live throughout the process of this child being in care. Now, foster care in its ideal scenario is meant to be a safe haven. That's how people perceive it to be. That's how children perceive it to be, and that's how children going into care should expect. But these children often, unfortunately, face instability because they're having to sometimes adjust to multiple placements, and sometimes they will feel or have to grapple with feelings of abandonment, anxiety, a lack of identity. And to talk more about this, I'm going to give you the lived experience of somebody who I'm going to be keeping confidential, who has lived within foster care, and I had the opportunity to be able to interview them before I actually came on this show. And for purposes, they have consented to me sharing their story without giving away their identity or their name. But what we're going to do is refer to them as Child X. Okay? So it's very important. And one of the questions that I asked them was about their current state of sort of, what are the challenges that they face. Now, it's the instability, first of all, that this carer, who is now an adult, has faced whilst they were in care. Now, this particular child or adult, now adult, had faced multiple placements that ranged from being with their foster carers for a few weeks, a few months, and even years. Now, the biggest challenge, I was told, was that this individual found it very difficult for them to form lasting relationship with not only their foster carers, but with their schools, with their communities, with their friends, which then led to a lack of trust in adults. And what that meant was that this individual, X, who I had interviewed, had then spoken about having behavioural or emotional problems, especially because X had faced abuse before going into care. So there was never any instability. And I found that very tough to listen to, listening about some of the impacts on children and their emotional well-being too. Now, some of the emotional issues that children in care face are anxiety, they can get anger, as X had told me that they had, and even suffering from depression. X told me that they felt a sense of loss or grief, not only for the family, the birth family, who they missed desperately, but because of the instability in their own life. And X had struggled with attachment issues that affected their own ability to bond with others, always having a lack of self-esteem or thinking that they weren't good enough because of repeated rejections, even if those rejections were beyond their control. And I actually, when I was interviewing X, I found it very heartbreaking. And it was very eye-opening for me as well. And I was thankful that X actually shared that experience with me, which can't have been easy. But alongside that, it is so important that we speak about the support and how better than to ascertain the level of support that we can provide to children in care as adults than by asking the children themselves. So my next question really to X was, who didn't want to come on the show, although it would have been wonderful had they wanted to. My next question to X was, how would you have liked to have been supported when you were a foster child, both in the system and once you had gone through transition out of care? The first thing that X told me was that they wished that they were heard and understood, and that was very important. And to varying degrees, they did feel that when they were placed in good foster care placements, where they had foster parents who cared for them in a way that they listened to them and their needs as well, and involving them in discussions about their lives wherever possible, and ensuring also from an agency perspective and an organisational perspective, be that GPs, the local authority, the schools, school nurses, ensuring that these children have access to mental health services and therapy, and being consistent about that as well. Having a stable foster placement, as in the experience of X, who I interviewed, and a support network, was something that X had stated was crucial to their life. And when X reached adulthood and transition out of foster care, they also said that it was important for them to understand that support was still needed, and just leaving them to their own devices was going to create a whole other plethora of problems as they face the challenges of independent living. And if we don't get that foster placement right, and if we don't provide that proper cocoon of support to our care leavers, their chances of going into employment and securing employment is going to be very, very low, especially gaining access to things like education, housing, and jobs. Now, foster care, as we know, even though I've just reiterated that the number of children in care in the United Kingdom is at 80,000, but it is so important that these children shouldn't be treated like a statistic. It is a reality for many children across the UK. Now, apart from that, X had also told me that they went into foster care when they were 6 years old, and their experiences were very mixed. They had some great carers who looked out for them, but also had multiple placements that weren't stable. But the thing that stood out for X was that the hardest part for them was the feeling of never really belonging anywhere and not feeling like they had a home and constantly being moved from place to place, which must have felt very isolating indeed. I then validated the fact that this must have been very difficult for X and asked X whether there were any specific moments or people in their mind who helped them during their time in care. And X told me that they were lucky to have one foster family who really took them in and made them feel like they mattered. They were given the security that they needed, but unfortunately, that placement only lasted for a few years before they were moved again. But because of that one stable placement, it helped X to get through some of those tough times where X was placed in various foster homes that were of shorter duration. X also told me that they had a social worker who was very supportive during their time in care, and that made an absolute huge difference. And often in the news we hear about social workers, don't we, who really are highlighted when something goes terribly, terribly wrong, when a child is killed or when the death of a child takes place. But actually, social workers who do their job with dedication and try and have the best interests of the child at heart will often not be celebrated. But to hear that from X, I think, was very eye-opening and very, very positive and heartwarming as well. Now, X reiterated to me, and I will read out their words word for word, and X said to me, if I had more continuity in my life, it would have made a huge difference. It wasn't about being in a new home. It was about losing the connections I had to everything, friends, school, my community. And more support around mental health would have been great as well, because a lot of the time, I didn't know how to deal with the emotions that I was feeling. And that really resonated with me, listeners. It really did. The fact that this person who I'd interviewed was a previous foster carer. And it was great to see how they had flourished, but also that they had the most tremendous power, and that was of their insight. They had the ability to recognise how they had felt all those years. I mean, imagine being taken into care at the age of 6, separated from your birth family with siblings, and being moved from placement to placement is traumatising. I thought that it came from a place of great strength to share something so personal with me. And, of course, the fact that X's story must have resonated with so many people. But the message that also came out of that was how very important consistency and emotional support are, which must be offered. Now, what is it that we can do to help such children who are in care? As a society, it's important that we all take action. We've all got a duty of care and a responsibility. Whether it's offering support as a foster carer, or donating to such organisations, or simply being a voice for those children. And we've got a wonderful Children in Care Committee here, the Care Leavers Committee, who are the corporate parenting committee in which so many children in care are looked after, and it's an incredibly rewarding committee. Now, there are charities, and it's incredibly rewarding work, as well as the work that's being done by Peterborough City Council. And training can be provided to foster carers on how to offer mental health support to children, to advocate for better policies and systems that benefit children in care. And there are some organisations that actually run initiatives that encourage the community to get involved in supporting children, whether it's through mentoring, fundraising or volunteering. And there are so many charity organisations in our city that can offer that incentive, which is why it's so important that children are aware of what they have, and that it also feeds in that stability of how families can take care of these children. Now, one of the things that I would like to give in the way of a message to people who are considering foster care or even respite care, if this isn't for them, there are other ways to help, even if you're not in a position to foster a child. One option is donating to those charities that foster children or help provide support for foster children. You could volunteer your time for such charities, and you can just spread awareness of the challenges these children face. And that can go a really long way. So if you are listening to this show, I really would like you to share this show to your portals and spread the word of fostering, especially in ethnic minority and minority faith communities in which fostering is considered a taboo issue, and also where you don't have a high prevalence of people who are taking up foster children. Please share this for their understanding, because in the first part of the show we had a great insight into how the system works, the fact that we have to admit that these children are vulnerable. They come from often places that are very, very broken, or that they have issues, and then they have to live a life of instability sometimes by virtue of either the number of placements, the fact that they are taken away from their school and their friends and their environment too. And in some cases, just like Catherine said before the break, some of these children are taken to places outside the city if they do not find a suitable match. And I will be personal a little bit here when it comes to trying to find a foster placement for a child who is Muslim. As you're aware, fostering agencies of Peterborough City Council try their very best to make sure that they match a child with a foster parent who is the appropriate foster parent in the way of faith, religion, cultural practices. But if they don't, then that child could be placed with someone of a different faith. Not to say that that child won't receive love. Of course they will. Of course they will. But a child growing up in an environment in which faith is important to them, especially in the Islamic faith, might find themselves going to a family in which those cultural practices don't prevail. It might seem alien to them. It might make them feel very lonely or isolated, even though they might be shown a lot of love, but that mental connection may not establish. Let's hope it does. I mean, we've seen many, many examples of people whereby have fostered children from other countries and from other faiths, and how those children have grown and become happy adults. There are examples every day of that, of children getting adopted by people from other countries and other faiths and other backgrounds, but they've shown that child love. And I guess that's the bottom line, isn't it? That anybody that shows a child love and give them a meaningful life will always find this rewarding and must be praised and applauded. But from the point of view of the child, an adjustment period is something to worry about, especially if that child doesn't feel that sense of familiarity. So for the sake of the child, it is ideal, although not always possible, to find a parent who shares their same heritage, culture, and if possible, faith. And if not, one hopes for the best, don't they? That's what we all do. Now, how do organisations or foster parents build trust with a foster family? It is incumbent upon the foster parent to make that child aware that they are safe with you, and try to create a predictable routine within the classroom. If you're a teacher and you're listening to this too, many children, as teachers know, will have experienced disruption whilst they've been in foster care. So again, the golden word here is consistency. So whilst teachers are aware of a child's circumstances, achieving a routine in school, achieving consistency, can just foster them a sense of stability and peace. And that can lead to a child feeling more secure. And also, if you are a teacher, try to connect with this child's social worker so that they also know that you understand their needs. And some of these social workers can be so wonderful. They will have all the information about a child, including their psychosocial circumstances, or even, for example, their circumstances at home, their likes, their dislikes, what time they go to bed, what they like to wear. Even if they're a shy child and they can't articulate it, I think it is very, very important as well. And I actually got a question during the show by a teacher who said that they have a few students in their class who are from foster care, and they always try to go out of their way to help ensure that that child has a routine and is following a routine so that they have a sense of predictability. And I think that's wonderful. So it's great that you have commented on that. I think that it's great that you have given your viewpoint as well. And I think that we have to continue to spread the message out for teachers who are listening to this as well. But it's important to create an environment where those children are loved and supported. So never underestimate that. Just before we wrap up, I am going to signpost you once again to the details. If you are interested in fostering, you have the website on Peterborough City Council, which is fosterwithpeterborough.org.uk. And if you're further interested, you could give them a call on 01733 868686. And please, think about it. If your children are grown up and you have a spare bedroom and you have a house which is warm, clean, and you have a lot of love in your heart, you meet the basic criteria of fostering a child. And that reaches towards the end of the show. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope you've had some valuable insights into the challenges faced by our children in foster care and the ways in which we can all make a positive impact. And whether you're considering fostering or looking to support a charity or simply educating yourself, you know, there's always something each of us can do, and it's about time that we looked at ourselves and think, what can we offer? So I'd like to thank you for joining me today on the Body, Health and Mind show. And remember, even small actions can make a big difference in the lives of children. Until next time, my listeners, this is Dr. Shabina Asad.